Stephanie Lepp, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Zubin. I'm happy to be here.
Probably the coolest and only hat I've had on the program.
It's about time.
It's pretty dope.
It's about time. Thank you.
Did you get it in a particular...
There's not like a particular, it's more just that like as a short person, I shouldn't actually be wearing hats like this because it makes hugging really hard. But I did learn a tip that I can share with all of you listeners. So if you're hugging another hat person, which is especially hard, you use one hand to hug them and the other hand to hold their hat.
Oh, wow.
You're each holding each, and then you can just go in for the hug and not worry about your hat falling off.
This is amazing.
Yeah, pass it on.
It makes me think that HAT is some kind of acronym for like hugs at the sassiest.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's hugs. It's the hug you've been wanting to give, but you were too scared that your hat was gonna. So now you can just go all in, full sass.
As a fellow short person,
yes,
who is often behatted, I appreciate that because it is the bumping of hats and like where does it hit?
Yeah,
but I love it.
Yeah,
and we connected in a really beautiful kind of. It just kind of points at the interdependency of all things.
Okay.
Which is, I think I had interviewed Daniel Schmachtenberger, who was in relation to the Center for Humane Technology and Tristan Harris and the documentary The Social Dilemma, which was one of my I love tearing documentaries apart as being pseudoscientific garbage. And I watched that one and I was like, yes. I did a video called A Real Doctor Watches The Social Dilemma.
Oh, nice.
And just really love, because I'm a fan also of Jonathan Haidt's take on coddling of the American mind and this just general idea that we've been polarized in society in a way that we've actually been played by algorithms that take advantage of our human impulse for tribalism and in-group, out-group and those sort of things. And I thought it was very powerful. And then you had reached out and mentioned that you were doing a series called Faces of X, where you were working on, because now you're a storyteller and a producer with Synthesis Media, and you're working on, you have the series called Faces of X, where you do something that no one is doing really, which is saying, hey, you know what? What if there aren't just these two sides to problems, a thesis and an antithesis? Maybe each are partially true. Maybe one is more true than the other. So we can actually have a conversation with the aim of finding a synthesis view that isn't a blend of the two. It isn't a middle point between the two. It isn't some milquetoast centrism that says both sides are right. It's a true synthesis that takes the best, truest parts of both and then synthesizes something new that might actually be weighted towards one side or the other. And that synthesis then is the shooting off point for another discussion where, okay, now that synthesis has its own antithesis.
Yes, it becomes the new thesis.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a constant endeavor to find truth in a world where truth may not fundamentally exist in a pure sense. So we're always going towards the asymptote.
Totally. Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
It made me think of what I used to call the alt middle, which was our movement. It's not a center.
Right.
It's a synthesis.
Yes.
Striving viewpoint.
Yes.
So and then I said, well, we just got to talk on the show.
Well, let's talk. Yeah.
So what kind of prompted you down this whole path to trying to depolarize things that seemingly are at insurmountable odds in an election year even?
Well, I can tell a personal story.
Please.
Yeah. So, and it's, I know you have perhaps a similar story. So this was my first kind of real experience with political activism. I was a freshman in college at Stanford, and I went with the Redwood Action Team at Stanford, acronym RATS, to a city council meeting in Mendocino to protest the logging of the Northern California redwoods. And it was all very exciting. And we were standing outside the city hall and kind of protesting before we went in. And at the time, a woman named Julia Butterfly Hill,
I remember her,
was living in one of those redwoods. And we called her from the protest, like to her tree. And she like gave us this pep talk.
So she had like a tree phone?
I guess so. This is in 1998. So, but she must have had something because she definitely kind of like spoke to us. And, it was all very exciting. But I noticed something that to me looked very strange, which was that the people who we were protesting against just looked like very humble people. These were the loggers with their families. They looked mostly like migrant workers from Latin America. And I just thought to myself, like, I don't really want to be on the opposite side from those people. Like, I want to be on the same side as the trees and the people. I didn't know anything about sustainable development at the time, but I knew enough to say, like, the way these lines are drawn just does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
And that kind of marked the end of my involvement with rats and with politics for a while, and the beginning of, I don't know what I would have called it then, but the beginning of a fascination with integrating different perspectives. I mean, I used to call myself a promiscuous, pragmatic pluralist until I discovered integral, and I was like, oh, so much easier, so much less of a mouthful. But so that was definitely kind of like the trip I was on, was how do we take the insights, no matter where they come from, and weave them together into a bigger picture of reality. That's
beautiful. And just to circle back a bit to the word integral, which is a Ken Wilber sort of ish philosophy that says, hey, things are true but partial, and some things are more true and less partial, and we're always striving towards this more holistic whole. He actually, instead of using hierarchy, which he says is a kind of an older dominator, sort of one somebody's more powerful than the other in a hierarchy, we're talking about holarchies, where we're each is every little level higher is a little more whole, a little more true, but we're always going and trying to integrate all the truths. And that's what's beautiful, because my experience coming, it's the same thing. So we were mortal enemies. I was UC Berkeley, Cal Stanford, at each other's throats since the big game, 1981. I'm really glad
we can sit down and talk to each other now, though.
This itself, people, is a kind of, it's a kind of Soviet era detente. Like, this is like a summit.
I think we just solved everything.
I think we solved the world. The meta crisis.
Us sitting together here.
And I walked into Cal's campus as a freshman, like day one, and I got interviewed by a reporter from the Daily Cal, which was our student newspaper. And they said, hey, what do you think about the People's Park controversy with building volleyball courts on People's Park? And just the quick summary is, it's very similar to the trees. There was this piece of land in Berkeley that was owned by the university, but it had been really kind of taken over by local community, whether it's sort of homeless people, whether it's people that were activists, other people that were using it as a sort of public space. So it had a very communal feel to it. And the university said, no, we're actually going to use it as a place that's structured for public use, volleyball courts. So they wanted to turn it into volleyball courts. Now, it's their land, but there was all these protests, and it became, actually, there was violence and all this other stuff. And so they interview me, and I'm fresh off the boat from Clovis, California, the most conservative city in California at the time, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I considered myself quite liberal, which apparently was not liberal enough for Berkeley. So I gave them an answer that was I thought was an integral answer, which is, okay, each of these views is true but partial. Yes, the university owns the land, and so it's theirs to do with as they see fit. And if their decision is to do this, well, they have the right to do that. However, they should take into consideration that people have found a use for this land that is very important to them, and that should be a consideration of theirs. So it was kind of like this synthesis view.
It's beautiful. I love that you just had that on the spot.
And I got shit on. So my first day on campus, and people were recognizing me.
Wow.
And because there was a picture of me, and you're that kid who said that the university could build volleyball courts. I'm like, did you actually read what I said?
Did you get heat from both sides?
Yeah, actually I did.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, actually,
so that's like my joking tagline that I'm not actually going to use, is something like least disliked by most people who can't agree on anything else. That's really what I'm going for here. Yeah.
That feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because people will say, you're not in our tribe, therefore you must be the enemy.
Yeah.
Or you're not fully, like, there are dark forces in this world and you're not fighting them strongly enough.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, but those dark forces actually think they're doing good. So what is it in their philosophy that might actually have a grain of truth that you could at least then align, and this is what I love about what you do with Faces of X and these other productions, steelman their arguments. So what does steel manning mean?
Steel manning. So steel manning is the opposite of straw manning. So straw manning is representing the weakest version of another perspective. Steel manning would be representing the strongest. So a straw man argument about abortion, about the pro-life position would be something like, these are people who just don't care about women's rights.
Right. So you're saying a straw man is usually foisted out by a person arguing against a position to diminish the position to a caricature of what it is.
To make it sound weaker.
Yes.
A steel man of the pro-life position would be something like, these are people who appreciate the sanctity of life and recognize that the moral calculus changes over the course of a pregnancy because a fetus becomes more viable.
Got it.
Right? It's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So a steelman position on a pro-life view would allow a pro-life person to say, that's what I believe.
Yeah, and ideally a pro-choice person to be like, hey, you have a point.
That's right.
That is worth integrating.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the same could be done for the sort of pro-choice people.
Totally.
Yeah. But yet, what is typically done in politics and elsewhere as an argument style is to straw man and say, okay, let me put up a straw man here that is a facsimile of what they believe that's very weak and kind of actually not quite accurate.
Yeah.
And then we can beat the shit out of it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it actually, it does a disservice to your own view, right? Because then it doesn't actually like encourage you or enable you to actually strengthen your own view in the face of a legitimate critique or a legitimate challenge or a legitimate perspective that you had not included.
Yeah.
So it's actually to your benefit. Like I think a lot of the kind of like bridging or anti-polarization kind of world kind of comes from this, comes more from an orientation around civility and, being respectful and like I obviously I'm interested in that, but I'm coming from the perspective of just like, do we or do we not want to understand reality as best we can, right? Like, therefore, it probably behooves me to integrate as many insights as I can find, no matter where they come from, right? So I care about being civil and respectful and all of that, but I am coming with a slightly different orientation of just like actually understanding to the best, as best as we can, what we're dealing with.
The way I see that's beautiful. The way I see that is that there's a ruthlessness to getting at the truth, which is not there to spare anyone's feelings or to gloss over differences. It's to highlight the aspects of each argument that are true and the aspects that are problematic, and then hash it out in the hopes of finding a new synthesis position that actually is going to, by nature, have its strengths and its flaws in itself. So then this is what I love about, you have a diagram, I think, on the website that I thought was fantastic, because you're not just saying we've solved it.
Yeah.
Here's a synthesis that melds like pro-choice and pro-life together in a way that everybody's happy. It's like, no, that synthesis itself is going to have a shadow. It's going to have an incompleteness to it that then will launch an antithesis position. Right.
It's this. So Ken Wilber has a line that every good theory helps you get to a better one. That's really all we can ask for is just the next jumping off point.
That's it. Yeah. Beautiful.
The next best jumping off point.
That's right.
And you make a nice that, we're not all, so synthesis is different from centrism. Centrism lets itself be defined by the extremes.
Yeah.
Sounds like not such a good idea, right?
Not ideal.
Letting the extremes define you.
Yeah, because as a centrist, you're saying I'm in between these two extremes.
So you're letting and then both-sides-ism just makes the assumption that, both sides are equally right. It's like, well, it's not very likely that one side is entirely right.
That's right.
It's also probably not very likely that both sides are equally right. What's most likely is that most of us are partially right, and some of us are more right than others, which doesn't make for a great tagline, but that's kind of what's up when we're contending with the full complexity of reality.
Okay, and this is where like Wilber's philosophy gets criticized by people in the postmodern space.
Yeah.
So it's a worldview that's just prior to integral if you're looking holarchically. and this is part of the criticism is that Wilber's philosophy says there are some things that are more true. There are some things that are better for human suffering. There are some things and we're trying to find them. Whereas the prior worldview, the sort of green
perspectival
cultural sort of postmodern meme, this idea is that no worldview is right. They're all culturally created. They're all equally valid and invalid.
Except for that one.
Except for the one that says all worldviews are equally valid. So it's self-contradictory.
Yeah, it's self-contradictory. It also just makes it's like, well, then why care about anything?
That's right.
How can you make any claims about justice or anything if nothing is better than anything else?
Yeah, you can't make claims, and yet they do.
Yes.
So it's like it's internally contradictory, and I think this is where you see this like sort of woke, anti-woke dichotomy.
Yeah.
The people who don't like woke are seeing the postmodern madness at its extreme.
Yeah.
But what they're not seeing is the beautiful kernel of truth there.
Yes.
So like it's very interesting.
I want to do phases of wokeness.
Yeah.
So we've learned how to do, what happens is we've learned how to do equal opportunity criticism. It's like, congratulations, you learned how to criticize the right and the left. It's like, okay, well, where's the equal opportunity praise?
Yeah.
Where's the taking what's good from everywhere and building something new with that? So we have, the discourse has gotten a little stuck in doing the just like forgive me but that's where I see heterodox having gotten a little stuck. So synthesis, I would say, is different from heterodox too, because that can sometimes devolve into just knee-jerk anti-wokeness.
Let's talk about that, because I saw you said that somewhere and it resonated with me so deeply, because during COVID, I was firmly in this new emerging camp of heterodox thinkers where we were challenging some of the conventional wisdom about, does every child need 3 boosters?
Thank you for doing that.
Right?
Yes.
But there will be people in the orthodoxy who will say, well, you did harm because we're trying to give a message that everyone will just get the most vaccines possible because we know they're going to underdo it anyways, and so on and so forth. So there's dogma on all sides of it. But what ended up happening with that heterodox community, especially as they got attacked more, their human nature was to tribalize and to then become reflex contrarians.
Yes.
So it's like, no. Well, now you want me to get measles shot for my kid? No, I'm not going to do it because you fucked up COVID.
Exactly.
And now I'm going to let my kid, be a fomite.
Yeah. And that's not like, you don't want to, again, you're letting yourself be defined by the dog, whatever the tribe. Yeah, because then you're just anti that.
That's right.
You're just you're actually letting yourself be defined by the orthodoxy because you've just become anti-orthodox.
It's kind of like being a centrist. You're letting yourself be defined by the extremes.
And it's like, don't get stuck. Like, you want to just stay as close to
finding open truth. Yeah, maybe just an openness, a kind of openness.
Yeah.
There were a few things that you prompted me to think about. And one was that this idea of middle, right? In Buddhism, this guy Nagarjuna came out a few centuries after Buddha, and he was like, you know what? People are saying there's no absolute self, and other people are saying there's an eternal self, and a soul, if you will. And then there's a nihilist and the eternalist. And he's like, what if neither was right and neither was wrong? So that's what he called the middle way. People get confused. The middle way is some kind of like, I'm just like, I have this equanimity. No, it's like, it is neither and both simultaneously. So it's being able to hold paradox, see truth everywhere, and see falsity where it is, and hold it all.
Yeah.
And humans aren't evolved to do that, actually. We're evolved. If you listen to Jonathan Haidt and you believe him, you say, well, our minds are actually very tribal. We want to hold a belief. We want to defend it. It allows us to survive in our tribe, not get excommunicated.
And some people might hear that and think that sounds like postmodern. It's like, well, then it's everything, then it's nothing. But I think it's something more like, under what circumstances, if any, is this idea helpful?
Yeah.
Right? And I can just choose. I can choose to believe that we have an eternal self, or that we have no self, or that it's both, or that it's neither, just depending on whatever it is that I'm trying to do. Like, I can hold them tightly and loosely. I like to say, I'm so open-minded, I'm even open to being closed-minded sometimes.
Yes.
I can still choose that. I'm closed-minded about, like, I really respect, my husband has a very kind of traditional relationship with Judaism.
Yeah.
And, his relationship with the 10 Commandments, it's like, I didn't choose this. This was commanded to me. I have enough choices in my life, and this is not one of them. This is just something I surrender to. And that I really appreciate the ability to, it's like, I can be choosing and open and whatever in some domains of my life, and be just like completely devoted unquestioningly in others.
That is a kind of integrity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're being true to whatever's arising whatever you're feeling about that, you're being true to that. And so like, a good example to explore that a little further is like this self, no self, or free will, no free will. Let's just unpack that for a second. So people will say, I have free will. I can make choices. I made the choice to keep kosher, or I made the choice to obey the 10 Commandments, or I made the choice to pick up this cup. And it sure feels like that. Yeah. And yet the neuroscientists and the meditators can look for this chooser and consistently fail to find it and realize, no, this is a series of causes and conditions beyond our understanding currently that make that choice. So choices happen, but you're not doing them. But then, so there's no free will, and yet it feels like I have free will. And guess what? Both are true and both are untrue whenever they need to be.
Exactly. And we can choose for purposes of ironically, I guess, but for purposes of, having some kind of legal order and being able to hold people accountable for their choices. It's really helpful to just assume in that context that people made a conscious choice.
That's right.
So
how could you have a criminal justice system?
Exactly.
And yet then you could also go further and say, okay, so this person was the sum total of forces beyond them. So to retribute in a way that is excessive, that doesn't keep the public safe, but is now just punitive on that person, that hasn't shown evidence to actually prevent further crime, well, then we got to question that.
Yeah, totally.
So that's what we're talking about with synthesis, going back and forth, and that gets to a death penalty argument. Okay, does it make sense to have a death penalty? And and again, I'm agnostic on this because I see truth on each side of that. Yeah. And yet I lean towards one side, being a sort of free will is very fluid. Yeah. I see, and I've sort of seen a lot of amazing work in the prison population when they work on emotion repression and things like that, doing circling and stuff like that, how you're able to see how trauma and the way these folks have been through hell would land them in a situation where they would murder someone in a premeditated way. Doesn't excuse it. Doesn't make it okay. You don't want them out on the street killing other people. Right. But you might have enough compassion arise that you would give them resources in prison to better themselves in some way.
And going back to it's do we or do we not want to understand where these things come from,
where do they come
so that
from?
We can prevent them, right? And so it's helpful, generally speaking, to just have a better understanding of how these actions arise.
It's in our selfish interest to be compassionate towards what is true.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Where does compassion fit into this with you?
It's
or
funny.
Is it optional?
No, I don't. I mean, I think I think it's kind of like a downstream kind of it just happens.
It's an epiphenomenon.
It's an epiphenomena. But it's funny. People often, having looked at my work or looked at Reckonings, a podcast I used to produce that explored how people change. People assume I'm a very compassionate person because oh, you must be, it's I'm just watch me with my husband and my kids. It's so much easier with this former white supremacist who I don't know than, So, but I do think it is an epiphenomenon because to the extent that we understand where other people are coming from, that, and maybe that's also maybe a little bit of my, I don't know, Enneagram 5. I think I'm an investigator. For me, having understanding is the key to so much. For me, as you can tell already.
Yeah.
But for me at least, compassion is kind of downstream. Of understanding.
It's an emergent phenomenon of this work.
Yeah.
For me, it's interesting as an Enneagram 6 that tries to find
What's the 6?
The 6 is the loyalist, the sort of safety seeker, the one who finds beliefs in other groups and then fights for them. Oh. So and then goes to the next one if that one starts to, they get skeptical, so they're innately skeptical. Okay. So for me, so much of my life has been trying to find what I believe in others and being confused because I had this natural empathy and compassion that would allow me to see all views and when I allowed it to happen. Yeah. When I didn't, I could close off and just rigidly believe what I wanted and fight for that belief. Yeah. But this is the problem. Working in healthcare, I've advocated for frontline healthcare workers to really rise up and say, we're the ones who are doing this. We're the ones who should lead. We're the ones who But then I will go and meet with leaders in healthcare and I will see the constraints and the world that they're working in and that they're doing actually the best they can given the parameters that. So maybe we ought to think about good people trying to do the best they can in systems that force issues. So then you think about systems change. Yeah. So Yeah. And you said another thing too, I think is very important. When we're talking about Enneagram is just a personality. It's another personality matrix that you can sort of start to look at what software we're running. Mm-hmm. And one of the software programs is Enneagram 1, which is the idealist.
I'm married to a 1.
I'm married to a 9 with a 1 wing.
Okay.
So the 1 is the idealist. Their prime drive is they want to be good, which means they see evil in the world and they must do something.
For better and worse.
For better and worse. And so when we talk about this, what we may often find is people who are arguing these different viewpoints may well veer into the sort of Enneagram 1 wiring, where for them it's life and death.
Yeah.
And so having compassion and understanding, okay, so they're running a software program that this is existentially important that they be right.
Yeah.
And that they fight wrong.
Yeah.
And maybe you and I are looking for truth. Yeah. So how do we integrate that? Well, that requires a third piece that I think is important to me, which is self-inquiry, personal work.
Yeah.
Looking inside and seeing how you run.
Yeah.
I think if we did some of that along with the work that you're pointing out, as a Reckonings is a great example of that. Yeah.
I think actually the Greeks kind of had a formula for this.
So they had formulas for everything. Pi, all kinds of shit.
Because they have first-person epistemics. I should know who. I don't remember if it's Stoa or Aristotle. I should know which actual Greek philosopher. But first person is know thyself.
Yes.
Right. I think this is actually a formula for like 21st century media literacy. Know thyself. Know the other. Right. Like know your own frame with which you're looking at the world. Be able to steel man the other person perspective. And then the third person is actually like knowing the world. Yeah. Right. And that's where most of our media literacy is like fact checking and checking your sources. And it's like, but at this point, given all of the algorithmic and everything, like you actually you need to know yourself. Yeah. And you need to know the other. I mean, maybe that's actually a fourth one is like know thy algorithm that is like filtering everything, but either way, knowing yourself is definitely a key aspect to trying to understand whatever it is that we are trying to understand, to the point where I wish, like, I think it'd be so helpful if when you clicked on a byline in an article, it just took you to the, like, a short piece about the evolution of this person's worldview or something. Oh, yeah. It's like, who am I reading this through? What lens is this story coming at me through?
In a way, we do that in a hack way by if we look at the author, like that's what I do. I look at the author and I go, oh, okay, I kind of know this person's biases because I've read enough from them that this is how they, and then
it should be a Reckonings episode.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for them to surprise me with something that's out of character. Like I'm waiting for them to see.
Which might be harder for them to do. I mean, it might be harder for them to do if they're not even aware of their own character.
Bingo. So know thyself.
If you're just tracking your own, and you're like, am I doing the knee jerk, contrarian thing? Is that what I've become? So, yeah.
I tell you, and in the space I'm in and you're in, this is rampant. Yeah. The lack of knowing thyself.
Yeah.
So what happens is then we're actually being played by the very algorithms that we're complaining about because we get audience capture. Uh-huh. So we unconsciously try to feed our audience what we know works. And this is and it's fed by an internalized capitalism where we know we're going to get likes and ad revenue. And actually Peter Limberg, a mutual friend from the Stoa, has written about this. There's the audience capture, there's internalized capitalism, there's parasocial relationships where now people in the world know you, but they're projecting onto you what they think, their own stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're starting to conform in a way to it because you know it's going to give you that dopamine of getting the likes and the shares and the influence.
Yeah. That is just like my little, like, whatever silly fix for, whatever, these are just ideas, but is that some percentage of your ad revenue should go towards, I don't know, a therapist, somewhat, to like just be in dialogue about who you are becoming as you gain influence.
It ought to be mandated.
Like literally a percentage of your ad, like as your ad revenue grows, like you need to more and more take more responsibility for your, ultimately your co-creation of reality, but your like influence over the public conversation.
I like that. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
For me, it's been a journey because if I look back, we were talking earlier off camera about Reckonings, like these people in your series that had maybe gone from being a hardcore white supremacist to something totally different, and talking about how that evolution occurred. And people have told me, oh, I like watching you because you change your mind on things. You've evolved. I've seen your evolution. I've been with you from the beginning, started with the medical comedy videos, and now with then COVID, and then now this awakening stuff. And for me, I'm kind of just blind to it because it just kind of happens, and then I don't even notice. And so the more introspection, like started seeing a therapist to work on like internal family systems.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my God, there's a little exiled part of me that is a total asshole for a reason. Like,
for a reason.
Kid was bullied, had to be safe, puts on this thing. And I was like, oh, that little part takes control of the whole identity when it's not seen. Yeah. So when you actually see it, then you can go, okay, this part's arising right now, and I better just be aware. Same with Enneagram. If you know you're a 5, you know you're a 6, you know you're a 1, you go, shit, I'm just being a hardcore 1 right now. Maybe there's something else here I'm not seeing. Yeah. So it allows you to notice your own filter, the glasses you're seeing the world
through. It's funny.
Yeah.
Someone recently described Faces of X as IFS for our body politic, internal family systems it's like integrating the different parts of our body politic so we can kind of get to know each other.
I love it. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. And so for people who don't know internal family systems, it's a kind of a therapeutic style where you're looking at different parts of you that arose at different times in your development, and you're having dialogue with them and realizing, oh, I can actually see them consciously, love them and include them. Yeah. And it's the same. Faces of X. Tell me a little bit about Faces of X for people who haven't seen it.
Yes.
What's the premise?
The premise is, so if you were going to teach people how to transcend this binary woke, anti-woke, red, blue.
Abortion, anti-abortion.
Yeah, how
gender
would you do that?
And strict gender.
Gender ally or gender inclusive and gender critical.
Right.
Yeah, how would you do that? So Faces of X is one answer to that question. It's a series of short videos that integrate different perspectives on culture war issues like abortion, gender, and race, keeping it light.
Light stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff you talk about at the dinner table on Thanksgiving.
Yes, yeah.
Right, with your
Making
uncle.
Thanksgiving fun again. That's the other joking tagline. And the format is very simple. I use the Hegelian triad of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It's the same person playing all three. So the thesis and the antithesis, or, in abortion, it's pro-choice, pro-life, are going back and forth, steel manning. They're steel manning their own, but they're going back and forth. And then synthesis walks in, and again, the same person, and attempts an integration.
Got it.
And so, the series stars cultural influencers who are kind of known as being independent thinkers on these issues, but the series isn't really about the issues. It's ultimately about
the process,
cultivating our capacity to integrate different perspectives.
So, I love it.
A bigger picture.
I love it. And I saw a couple of those. One was the episode on capitalism.
Yes.
And I thought that was fantastic because the same person steelmans each position as their own. So it's like capitalism is the biggest engine of creation.
So convincing in each
role.
Yeah.
So
you're like, yes.
And that's what you want.
Yes,
That's what you want.
That is what you want.
You want to sit there and go, yes.
I agree with that.
But wait,
I agree with that. Yeah.
But wait, now what?
Yeah.
And then synthesis walks in and says, okay, so maybe capitalism's strengths will give it the tools to address its inevitable existential weaknesses if we're open to noticing those weaknesses and acting. Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, but the synthesis itself will have some holes in it.
Totally.
Which is exactly then the jumping off for the next.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So this is, and again, it requires a kind of internal family systems, like two little parts that, like we used to say it was a little angel and the devil in the cartoons, but both of them are little angels. They're trying to be good.
Yeah.
And again, it makes me think again of Jonathan Haidt's moral taste buds he talks about, right? That we are all born with these moral graphical EQ meters, I like to call them, like liberty versus oppression, care versus harm, fairness versus cheating, sanctity versus degradation, loyalty versus betrayal. And we all will feel those in different versions. So some prefer sweet things, some prefer salty things, some prefer bitter things. It's the same with morality. So you may look at abortion through a lens of the same 5 moral taste buds, but see it as liberty versus oppression. Why are you telling a woman they can't control their body? Or you might see it through the taste bud of sanctity versus degradation. There's a life form in there that you are
what's ironic
terminating.
is that the roles are reversed when it comes to COVID. Suddenly the left is about the sanctity and the right is about the autonomy over our bodies. So we know what it's like to like salty foods or like sweet foods.
We're fluid,
even though we like them in different contexts.
Yeah.
But there is a way in which I can, even if you're feeling the salty thing on this, I feel it with something else. So I can connect. It's like, oh, you like salt sometimes. Me too.
Totally. Yeah. That's it. And that's what Haidt would say is you align with that person's elephant, that biggest part of their brain that's unconscious. And you say, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
And that's what, during COVID, that's actually something I did consciously or subconsciously to try to talk to people who disagreed. I would say, look, we all agree that we want to be able to go about our lives freely.
Yeah.
And these guys are saying to do that, you should wear a mask so that we do this. And these guys are saying, but the masks have these side effects which don't allow us to be free. Right. Can you guys understand each other's point here?
Yeah.
It has to do with their own flavor of morality, and neither is wrong.
Yeah.
Now, you could do a perfect computer and this is where we're talking about some things are more true than others.
Yeah.
If you had a perfect computer that could determine truth in a quantitative way and go, okay, the masks do this and the vaccines do this, and then give you a number.
Yeah.
Then you could say, okay, actually, these guys are more right.
Yeah.
In these conditions.
Yeah,
but it's contextual. Because what about this condition? Oh, now we got to run the calculation again. Oh, actually, you know what? These guys are right. In Texas, where you have all this space and the climate is in San Francisco, on a bus, probably maybe some degree of distancing, maybe, who knows, right?
Yeah. That's why the under what circumstances question is really helpful. And so much of the debate, like with vaccines, it's like, I am pro-vaccines in the circumstances in which vaccines should be taken.
That's right.
And I'm anti-vaccines in the circumstances in which that question doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't even make sense.
So, yeah.
That's right.
And so under what circumstances, if any, would have been so helpful, would be, for all of the, under what circumstances, masks.
Yeah.
Under what vaccine, social distancing. It's like for all of these things, because it's not always and it's not never.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Let's figure it out.
And then we forget too that in this milieu where we are already innately divided because we're not seeing this, we don't know ourselves, we don't know the algorithm, we don't know how we're being played, we don't understand the ways that our biology is being innocently hacked in a way. Social media addiction is another pitfall.
Yeah.
You have state actors who are actually taking advantage of this.
Yeah.
And to manipulate us, to create division.
The three you're just kind of pointing at, you're like finding your way to the three kind of questions I asked myself when coming up with the synthesis. I mean, the synthesis, it's kind of an art and a science. Like, how do you articulate a synthesis? You just like swim through all of the perspectives and try to find points of it. I mean, that's like that's its own conversation in itself. But three questions that I would use each time to kind of guide myself towards finding points of synthesis. One was just the simple, like, is there an either or that can be flipped to a both and? That's very simple, but that's one way. And another one is this, under what circumstances can I shift from, X, what's better, X or Y, to under what circumstances are X or Y helpful? And then the third one, which you're just raising right now, is the when you're mentioning social media, are there perverse incentives that, were they kind of alleviated, would alleviate the debate?
Absolutely.
Like gender, as an example. I mean, if I were to go through all three of these, like, there's often, like, is there an either or that could be shifted to a both and? There's often this tug of war between biology. It's
you're born with XY chromosomes or XX chromosomes.
Woman equals female and man equals male. It's all about biology. And then
forget about intersex and the gray areas, even in biology. Yeah.
Which is so rare.
It's rare, but it does happen. Yeah.
And then the other side is pulling for, but what, masculinity and feminine and gender identity. Mm-hmm. And so, what they're talking about is culture, masculinity or feminine, and identity, whatever we identify as. And it's not like what's correct, biology or culture and psychology. It's like they all have something to do with what it takes to be a man or a woman. And in some, like sports is a competition between bodies, not a competition between identities. So there, we should probably lean on biology as the way that we categorize athletes. In other contexts, classrooms or where we want to be civil, like, we should probably identify people the way they want to be identified. So it's not, so that's maybe I should just go through all three of these for gender because it might be a good.
So and that's good. And there's in gender, there's the psychological aspect, the social aspect, and the biological aspect. And that fits right in with what I talk about on my show based on conversations I've had with Rachel Zoffness, who's a pain psychologist.
Yes, I know her well.
Oh, you know Rachel?
She used to be my neighbor.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, she is. Yeah. She's been sitting in that seat many times on my show. She's adorable and a really smart, brilliant thinker.
Brilliant.
Pain. Yeah. So she talks about things as biopsychosocial. Like all illness is biopsychosocial.
Yeah.
So actually many issues are biopsychosocial, and gender is a great example.
Yeah.
There's the biological, the psychological, and the social issues. Yeah. So could take us through.
This tug of war between biology and psychosocial doesn't really make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Right?
They're not a binary.
Yeah. So that, and then I guess I just answered the under what circumstances. So let's say sports, let's lean on biology. Elsewhere we can, but the question of the perverse incentives, I mean, what's so challenging, part of what's so challenging about, I'm about to be kind of un-PC, but is that...
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, okay, great. Is that there's a lot of kind of confounding forces. So there's the, social media that gives us poor body image. So we're all like hating our bodies and just like feeling outraged and just fighting with each other.
Yeah.
Then there's the healthcare industry, which is on its own, like driving over
medicalizes everything. Yeah.
And meanwhile, we are in the process of expanding the definitions of manhood and womanhood. Right. So it's so it could, like, if we were to deal with, social media and the health, profit-driven healthcare, and like fully expand the definite, like just do away with these ridiculous stereotypes and just would there be trans people? I don't know. I mean, and that is like such a non-PC question to ask.
Would we even call them anything like that?
Would they feel the need to change their like bodies to conform with some idea they have about what their bodies should look like in relation to the gender that they identify with? Is maybe the more like we don't actually know.
Yeah,
we
I don't
know. But what we do know is that we should deal with the social media stuff and the health. We should get all that stuff out of the way.
Recognize
so that when people are making some kind of choice to transition their gender, they can be doing it with the utmost sovereignty.
Right. And you could say that, I mean, this is tricky, right? Because that interplay between all those forces of the societal matrix, which includes the healthcare system, which is an epiphenomenon of humans trying to make money. It really is. I know this well. It is a broken way of doing it, but it works exactly as it's designed.
Oh, yeah.
And it generates a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
And to medicalize something is to make more money for the system. So that perverse incentive drives so much suffering.
Yeah.
And yet there's no movement to change it because it is making money for a lot of different people across a lot of different socioeconomic strata.
Yeah.
So it becomes this really interwoven thing. Yeah.
Well, but in this context of it gets everybody on the same team. Like, who doesn't want to address the social media algorithms that are giving us poor body image?
Right.
It's like, no matter what your idea is about gender, we can all be on the same team about that.
Yeah.
So it's a way of...
Yeah, unless you're a cosmetics manufacturer or a weight loss drug producer or, you know what I mean?
Although, but even there, I mean...
They might benefit from poor body image. Financially.
They do. Oh my God. They do benefit from poor, but is that why they wanted to go into cosmetics in the first place?
Yeah,
I don't know.
You're right.
I mean, I'm assuming,
Assuming
idealizing.
good intent.
I'm assuming that there's some, like, they had some, it was like an artistic impulse.
Right. Actually, this brings up an interesting point. Can you be blinded by unconscious financial incentivization to where your underlying morality is short-circuited? And I think in medicine, it happens all the time because people will believe they're doing good by doing a lot of procedures, even if data is given to them showing that it doesn't, because they realize, who said this? Upton Sinclair? Like,
you can't get a man to understand something when his paycheck depends on him.
Him believing the opposite or not understanding it. Yeah. And I don't know. I honestly don't know that answer. I'd say that my suspicion is that having worked in medicine, people are blind by money. Yeah.
Have you talked about Moloch on this show?
No.
Have you heard of Moloch?
No, it sounds like a Star Trek Vulcan character.
It kind of is. So Moloch is... this will make sense when Moloch originally appears in the Bible as a Canaanite god to whom people would sacrifice their children.
Ooh.
And then...
This got dark fast.
Yeah. And then Allen Ginsberg he wrote a poem, I don't remember, called Howl, where he describes... It sounds like he's talking about capitalism, but he uses Moloch.
Famous poem,
And then Scott Alexander of Slate Star Codex wrote a very well-known article called Meditations on Moloch. It's basically it's become this shorthand for situations where we sacrifice our long-term well-being for short-term gain. Arms races, tragedies of the commons, all these situations where rational individuals making rational decisions actually do something that is like suboptimal for everyone in the long term, including themselves. So even these,
that's what it is.
It's going to come and bite you in the ass at some point.
That's right.
Our long-term options are win-win or lose-lose. That's it. So
No, you're right. And I think in healthcare, that's a great illustration because there's very short-term thinking, and then $4 trillion of the U.S. GDP is now what we spend on healthcare, over $4 trillion. And that is not a sustainable, that's a self-terminating, as Daniel Schmachtenberger says, self-terminating process. So there has to be, so this is where, actually, let's bring it right back to what you're working on, which is thesis, antithesis, synthesis. If we continue to see it as a binary without a reconcilable both and, in what circumstances and what are the perverse incentives, we're going to continue to destroy our future. And it's shorter and shorter in the future now. So something usually arises in this scenario. As Ken Wilber would say in integral theory, he'd say a particular worldview, let's say the multicultural, the green postmodern worldview where, all views are equal, except for, you better believe my view that all views are equal. When that starts showing enough shadow, enough aggressive behavior where you're saying, I will send you to jail if you don't use the right pronouns, whatever, we'll make up stories that are extreme, right? Just to highlight, or, whatever it is that maybe some people on the right actually may rightly point out and go, this is bad behavior. That shadow itself drives the emergence of the next emergent. But it can also drive a resurgence of the prior emergent, a kind of regressive. And this is the danger, the sort of paradox where we're trying to move forward, but often the reflux or the rebound from this badness sends us back. So that's what we want to try to be cognizant of.
I'm totally with you, which is why I don't have a lot of love for Matt Walsh and that approach of just kind of like mean-spirited anti. You're pointing, it's a legitimate critique.
Right.
But did you need to be such a dick about it? That's actually not helpful.
And you've delegitimized it by doing that, because now people can argue that this is, okay, first of all, it's lacking compassion. But second of all, and here are all the other cases where, I remember the first time I ever heard the word woke, I didn't know what it was. And I gave a talk to 500 doctors and about something, and at some point I was like, I made a joke and people were laughing, and I was like, stay woke. And I just said that. I didn't know what it was. And after, this was years ago, right? Before it had really been adopted more widely, and it had a particular meaning. And I didn't know what it was. So I heard someone say it, and I thought it sounded kind of neat. And afterwards, an African-American couple of doctors came up, and they're like, thank you for saying that. That's really important to us. And I thought, what? And then I went down the rabbit hole, and I was like, oh, the original way this was used in the African Americans was to see where there's injustice and stay awake to it. Don't forget that this is happening. And they were really moved by it, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And so the power of that sentiment was not lost on me. So now what you may do is there are people who feel certain ways about that and the real true wisdom of certain types of awareness in that way.
Yeah.
And then you have someone coming at it in that way that's just purely dismissive, purely reactionary.
Yeah.
And I get it because they're right on a level, right?
Yes.
Very much so.
Yes. And actually on that, I mean, on the long-term options are only win-win, lose-lose. Like some people are going to lose way sooner than others.
That's right.
So that is also,
right.
That's also very true.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, but you know what comes after green, right?
Integral, teal. Yes.
So I do think that, partially, I do think some of the shadow can be a force for regression, but part of the us getting so up in arms about wokeness is also I do think giving some potential energy to slingshot us into because it's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to take a lot.
Yes. Integral almost seems to have the most escape velocity required to get.
It does, because it's the first time we go from my way is the right and only right way to under what's wow, look, what a beautiful abundance of ways.
That's right.
Thank God we've given birth to so many ways. Yeah.
That's right.
Some of them are more fair and more beautiful, but look at this bounty.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why Wilber calls it tier 2.
Yeah.
It's the first tier 2 emergent.
Yeah.
Because you had the old modernity sort of what is it, orange?
Yeah.
Sort of capitalism.
You know your colors.
Hey. I don't see color, okay?
Except for on the spiral dynamics.
Except on spiral dynamics, exactly. And orange was that emergent that came out that said, hey, there's a meritocracy here. You can achieve your way to success. There's competition.
Yeah.
My nation is better than your nation, and we're competing in a world of ideas and so on, and science and rationality.
Yeah, it was rationality for the first time.
For the first time.
Yeah.
Huge emergent. Huge emergent. But it still rejected all other worldviews.
Yes.
And that's its nature.
Exactly.
Then the emergent of green, which looked at modernity and orange and said, but there's downside here, you're destroying the environment, there's racism and xenophobia. So we need to see all these ideas as equivalent and multicultural and pluralism. And that's a beautiful emergent, but it denies orange.
Yes. Until for the first time we get to, is it helpful to get, are people
please
with
because they won't know.
Spiral, which one? Both?
Yeah. What's your favorite?
They're related.
Let's stick with integral for now, which is based on spiral dynamics to a degree, right? They're kind of.
I mean, the integral is. I mean, we've been talking about it all. It's synthesis is just you could just say. I mean, it's called a meta theory because it integrates other theories.
Yes.
Is the idea, and so it's the same. Instead of thinking, is this theory the one and only right theory about childhood development or whatever, it takes all of the existing theories and weaves them together into a meta theory. That's kind of the integral way.
Yes.
And there's all kinds of frameworks and quadrants and lines and levels.
That's right. Equal
but you can even just think of it simply as just as an approach, as a way of thinking or a practice that by its nature assumes that, different things have, partial rightness, and our job isn't to pit them against each other, but to weave them together into a bigger picture.
Yes. Yes, I think I like integral, and I'll say a couple things here. You at each level that prior to the emergence of integral, the goal of an integral thinker might be to not try to shame or discourage or discount that level, but rather to optimize the development at that level so that the emergent of the next might be a
totally.
natural.
You want the healthiest.
You're not walking around shaming people for being orange, say conservative.
We say a 9-year-old is not a defective 12-year-old.
I like that.
Everyone's, we got, and then sometimes people can't we move faster? Can't we just skip?
Right.
It's
not
only can you not, we wouldn't want to do that.
Because each is part of the emergent.
Yeah.
If you never had orange, how can you be a good green?
Yeah.
You're going to be broken.
Yeah.
Or stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so spiral, so the spiral dynamic, I guess, maybe just to give a little more context. So I imagine people are familiar with, have you talked about Maslow's hierarchy?
Yes. And in fact, many nurses are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy because they teach it.
Oh.
Yeah, the pyramid of you start with your basic needs, and then you get to needs of belonging and community and love and protection and safety, and then self-actualization.
So there's actually one that's higher than self-actualization.
Please.
And we always forget it for some reason. I mean, maybe it makes sense that we forget it. So what's above self-actualization is actually self-transcendence. needs.
Ah, yes, of course.
Yeah. So we spent all this time focusing on ourselves, my needs and my physical state and my belonging, my love, just to give it up, transcend myself and surrender to something bigger than myself.
Yes.
Which is what parenthood is all about.
That parenthood is a natural self-transcendence.
Forced self-transcendence. Yeah. You thought you were self-actualized?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now notice though with that, in order to get to self-actualization even, you have to have those previous levels taken care of. Just like you can't skip levels in integral or spiral dynamics. Yeah.
So Maslow was a contemporary of, his name was Clare Graves, and Clare Graves was developing this other system for understanding how human consciousness evolves, both within the context of one individual lifetime and within the context of humanity. How systems. Yeah. Well, and from
total development of
primal humans all the way to, So Clare Graves developed this system called spiral dynamics of consciousness, which sounds very woo, but Maslow was like, dang, that's the thing. Amazing. Yeah. But Clare Graves died before he was able to fully popularize it, which is part of why we're so much more familiar with Maslow.
I see.
Yeah. So and so it was kind of furthered by his students, but Ken Wilber is actually the person who kind of popularized and has really used spiral dynamics in his own work. But so there are different stages and associated with different colors.
That's right.
And the general progression is from egocentric, like focusing on myself, to ethnocentric, focusing on my tribe, whether that is my literal tribe or my nation, whoever I consider to be my tribe, to world-centric, where you're thinking about what could be after world, to integral, where it's all of the above, depending on the circumstances. But that's the general. And so
the arc.
What we do is we go through the stages in a life. Like the first stage that we ever went through as humans is like an infant, is like just focused on survival.
Yeah.
And then, the tribal, which now we do, let's say it's like the terrible twos, and also we do it on our sports teams. It's like we find they no longer are our civilizational operating system, but they find their place in our society where they make sense.
Right.
So we transcend and include.
So they're included. They're transcended because they're not the centerpiece. It's not like when we lived in tribes and we were fighting other tribes to the death as an existential thing, and that's all there was.
Yeah.
There hadn't been the emergent of something bigger.
Yeah.
And exactly. So keep going.
And I mean, it's just kind of it's just a beautiful way to think about, it's not like previous bad, current good. It's like, wait, we are literally in a process of evolving.
Yeah.
And we are just continually giving birth to more and more ways of doing things that maybe we outgrow at some point. They are no longer our operating system, but they're still very useful in certain contexts, like for sports teams or for, wherever they fit in our bigger,
bigger holism.
A bigger holism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's interesting because the transcend and include means you don't reject those parts. It's very similar to internal family systems. You don't tell this inner child you shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You go, hey, you're here for a reason. You served a real, I know what it was like there. You're welcome. Your voice is heard, but just understand there's a bigger truth now that can hold that and can take care of that.
Yeah.
Incorporate your voice, but without you having to be the only voice, and you'll be heard.
Yeah.
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 And so this gets right to the heart of this dialectic of trying to synthesize.
Yeah.
And I think until integral, it's very hard to do this.
Yeah.
Because the worldview by nature, by its design, has to reject the other worldviews. It says, this is not okay. This is not okay. When I talk about healthcare, when I talk about something called Health 3.0, I'm talking about an integral healthcare. And I have been for about a decade. And what that means is we had Health 1.0, which was sort of modern healthcare, actually pre-modern healthcare.
Yeah.
It was very tribal. There was a doctor and a patient in a sacred relationship, but it was unfettered by data, a lot of science, trials. It was very paternalistic.
Yeah.
So it was almost like blue level in spiral dynamics or in integral.
Totally.
It's like there's a hierarchy. The doctor's at the top. You listen to him and you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that was how it worked. But the failures of that were, the paternalism. Patients started getting data. It got really expensive because it was fee for service. So what emerged was a more modern, postmodern medicine, which is, we can quantify everything in a machine model. Like humans are machines and we need to optimize the parts. We'll use Toyota's lean assembly line machine, and each human working in this is a raw material, and the outcome is health. So we'll use this sort of capitalist model, and then a sort of pluralistic model where we'll think about health disparities and all that. But yet now everybody's alienated, and there's no sense of connection, and there's no, a doctor can't even say, well, this is what I would do. Yeah. No, you say, well, the data says this, and you can go.
Well, and all I know about is your left pinky nail, so I can't actually really tell you anything about.
It's a complete reductionism. And so what's Health 3.0? It doesn't eliminate one. It says the best aspects of one were this relationship. The best aspects of two are systems thinking. Yeah. And the three emerges something that is not just the sum of its parts. That's with integral too. Yeah. The new emergent is not just this plus this equals this. It's this plus this equals what the hell? Yeah. Like something new. Yeah. That then emerges the next thing. Yeah. So it matters in healthcare. It matters in politics. It matters in engineering. It matters in social studies. It matters in politics. It's so this is all to say that the work that you do is pointing at integral. It's trying to nudge us to this next stage.
It's in the canon of integral without saying integral.
Because you start saying integral and people's eyes glaze over.
Yeah. I haven't actually.
Including other integral people.
I don't think I've actually ever said it in any of my work. I did have, in Deep Reckonings, in a series of, I did have Brad Kavanaugh say a very integral. He says it's a very integral kind of ism, is evolution is beautiful, but it's not pretty.
That is
he's talking about the Me Too movement, and
because it was him using AI to imagine what would happen if somebody introspected on a kind of reckoning in a public way with a public figure.
Yes, it was.
It's almost integral fantasy porn.
I had the idea before I knew that, before deepfakes existed. I just had this. I was fantasizing about I used to produce a podcast called Reckonings that told the stories of how people change, how people, the former, like I said, a former white supremacist who transcended a life of violence, a deeply conservative congressman who had what he called a spiritual conversion on climate change, just all these amazing, and I had this wish list of guests of people who I wanted to have on, I wanted to talk to the Pope about, the clergy, his reckoning with the clergy sex abuse crisis.
Oh, yeah.
The Pope never called me. So I was like, why don't I write his reckoning for him? So I wrote the script and I had an actor perform. I said it was fiction.
Yeah, right.
I'd never released fiction on the show, so I had no idea what people were going to say. And people loved it, and I even heard from survivors of clergy sex abuse who, knowing that it was fake,
felt some relief,
found it so helpful to hear the imaginary Pope say the kinds of things that they would love to hear the real Pope say. Yeah. But it came from an impulse that was pre-deepfake, and then I realized I can do this with
pretty remarkable
video.
Of course, easily abused, right? Because you could take a stance and promote that stance through the deep fake that may not be an integral synthesis, but rather a...
No, I mean, synthesis too can also be weaponized.
Oh, totally.
Right? We can. It's like if I want to convince you of something center left, I just make center one side, left the other side. And I'm like, look, the synthesis is a center left, So we have to kind of be really discerning
of that,
about which perspectives we're integrating and how we frame the sides of the debate. And there's not really like a foolproof way to know.
Yeah. You have to know thyself.
Yeah. You got to keep praying or maintain your connection to God or whatever to keep yourself connected.
That's right. To that self-transcendence. Yeah. Which, here's a funny thing about self-transcendence that I realized recently is, this idea of like, okay, I'm not this. I can actually investigate. I can actually transcend this and realize I'm all this, and then realize I'm not even that. It's all this is just everything. And then there's a click that happens where it's like, even the question falls away and you come right back here and it's like, let's get on living because everything's fine. It's all exactly as it is. It's exactly what you're pointing at. It's yes, it's both and, it's neither or, it's all just fine. And because the question is based on a deep paradox, I feel like a self, but there's no self, that even falls away and the question falls away.
Yeah.
And so Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No.
It's like you're back to the same. I mean, it is a spiral for a reason.
That's
because
right.
You do kind of come
You
back.
come full circle. It's a hero's journey.
Yeah. But it's but there is a vertical dimension to it, right? It's like all right, same season, but we're in a very different year.
Different year.
Yeah.
So now I'm saying I come back, but it's not the same.
No, not this. No.
It is like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Even before you came, I was just sitting walking around the house going, God damn, like everything is just radiant perfection of the entire universe emerging this moment, and I'm not in it. And then 5 seconds later, it's like, here I am. I'm going to do an interview. And it's all totally seamless. Yeah. Now, one thing that popped in my mind when you were talking about integral and spiral dynamics is maybe a good analogy here. We could use movies as a way to go through the spirals in the last 3 stages going into integral. So there are movies in a style called modern. There are movies in a style called postmodern, and there are new movies in a style called metamodern. Yes. So examples might be, a modern style might be Top Gun, even the new Top Gun. So there's a feeling like when you watch the new Top Gun, like they don't make movies like this anymore. Like, what is this? Like and the modern style of movie was like, you have a hero, you have a villain. It's a simple arc. There's tension. The hero makes good, goes through troubles, and comes out the other end victorious in a very black and white way. And that is the modern style. It's patriotic. Like it's just clear. Old Westerns, that kind of thing. Okay. That was then, you could say, is the orange modern meme, that phase of development. Then you have postmodern. So a movie like No Country for Old Men. So in this movie, the villain, everything is capricious. There's no justice at all. It's entirely almost stochastic, random, that the bad guy kills you or doesn't. He, in fact, flips a coin. The ending is so unnerving. And the whole thing just makes you feel weirdly alienated from any sense of center or meaning. And that's postmodern. And much of our recent cinema has been in that postmodern vein. You just kind of go, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. So then, and all has its value, because postmodern is saying these ideas of good and bad and predictability are not based on anything. They're culturally created. So what if we fuck with it totally? So then what happens? A movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
It's like the quintessential,
metamodern movie. In this movie, you have a modern element, which is there's a heroine. She's going on a quest. She's going to fight Jobu Topaki and slay the demons and bring her daughter back safely. Then there's the postmodern, which is like the chaos of the multiverse. Like in any multiverse, you could be anything. So what really matters? She says it explicitly. How can anything matter when everything's possible at once? And then the metamodern is actually bringing back elements of the modern. So there's an emotional connection to a meaning. Well, the meaning is we're here together right now. And yet there's a postmodern like chaos, and there's chaos, and that's okay. And yet the ending of the movie, even though it ends on this, like, she's still quite fractured, you get this feeling of like, that's metamodern, that's synthesis, that's integral. And it's beautiful because it doesn't deny any of that insanity or the beauty of the modern.
I have a dream of making, like, I don't know, like integral redos of like failed, like the one that I want to do the most is Barbie.
Oh,
Did Barbie. You watch Barbie?
Yes, beautiful. Beautiful.
But the end,
I know.
Forgive me, it's like they're just ping-ponging between matriarchy and patriarchy.
I know.
And since she doesn't know how to land the like she doesn't know how to give us a vision of a society where men and women are powerful together, she makes her human.
She takes the stance. Yeah, exactly.
It's like she didn't know what to do.
That's right.
So it's like, but of all the millions that you spent on this movie, you think you could have spent a little bit on articulating a vision for a society where men and women can be powerful together.
So remake it as an integral both
Just
and.
make the end. Just remake the end.
What's the context? Remake the end. Yeah. For me, it's funny. I saw that movie more in the realm. I made a video about this actually, like the deeper meaning of Barbie, and of course nobody agreed with me. But I think it was.
You're just ahead of your time.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
right.
the daily.
I'm too integral. I'm post-integral.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm centauric.
There are post-integral.
Yes, there are.
That have, but I like don't even understand the descriptions of them. I think because I'm just not there yet.
You know what's funny? I used to, when I first started reading about integral, I couldn't understand those at all. I was like, what the hell is this? And now, having had certain experiences and certain insights. I don't know if they're insights, 'cause you just can't say because they're unsayable. I look at that and I go, I can't tell you what this is, but that's right. What he's describing there, that's what's post-centauric, whatever, you know. I'm like, that exists. You know, it's there, but just hasn't been. But what I said about Barbie was, it was about, to some degree, a deep kind of societally induced emotional repression of what our true nature is. And Barbie starts to feel it when she feels like, what is this sadness that I'm feeling? And they use an external character, the human who plays with her, as the vehicle for Barbie to feel. But society's telling her, you live in this house, you behave in this way, you feel certain things, and you can't feel others. And then she starts feeling these things and she starts falling apart because all the shadow starts arising, all the unconscious. And then she goes in the world, and the first thing she does is she sees a woman and she's like, you're beautiful. She's like, well, you're seeing me as I am, with all the wrinkles and all the shadow and everything. So I interpreted it in that way because, of course, everything's infinitely interpretable. Right. But that's what I was feeling at the time, was I was working on emotional repression in me. And so that's what I saw in the movie.
You're knowing thyself.
That's right. Yeah, I'm projecting myself onto the movie.
Let me tell you what's going on with me before I tell you my review of Barbie. I'll help it make a little more sense.
I think I might have done that. Yeah.
And you did include
I think that. I might have.
Nice.
I might have said, well, because I'm working on this myself, so this is how I see it. Yeah. But it is a particular brand of narcissism to review a movie that way, and I'm going to continue to do it.
Whether we're conscious of it, it's like you call it narcissism. It's also just how we otherwise
how we're wired.
Exactly. I mean, we need to use our senses of perception and in order to perceive, and therefore, I would want to see actually more of that on a news show. It's like the anchors that I would appreciate. I mean, maybe that sounds insane, but I would not mind.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah, just a little, and even to the point of maybe every Friday. Have you ever seen those people who kind of live narrate their emotional experience, where they're like, I'm feeling a tightness in my chest. I think fear is, it's like, now I feel it in my throat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that, it's like talking about, the situation in Gaza, I'm feeling the tightness in my chest. Yeah, bring your
self knowledge to the or the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll help us, I think, be able to process it too, honestly.
And to know the instrument that's delivering the message a little better. Yeah. Because right now you just assume they're biased in a way that you can't fully understand, and it's not overt, and then you distrust it in some way, especially with news anchors.
Yes. Who are all of
comedy
the
hosts.
Same. Yeah. They're the same kind of.
Yeah. It's funny because I've been watching the comedian Shane Gillis on YouTube recently a lot. Have you ever seen it?
No.
So he got canceled before he got accepted into Saturday Night Live as a cast member. And then they went back to his old podcast and he said all kinds of non-PC shit and got canceled, and he didn't get the gig.
Oh my God.
And so it became a big deal. And I think the right kind of championed him.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is when you watch him reflect, say with Joe Rogan, he was reflecting on it. He's extremely introspective about it. He's like, it really hurt in this way that I'm even uncomfortable to talk about it now. I got canceled before I ever even started. And I said a lot of crazy shit, but I say a lot of crazy shit. But if you really know me, I'm not a total asshole, and you could kind of feel through his process.
Yeah.
When I watch his comedy now, he says things that are so outrageous, and yet there's a feeling of deep, he knows who he is, and he knows he's not a bad person, so he can say those things in a funny way, really from a place of love. It's really weird.
Yeah.
He does the best Trump impersonation I've ever seen, too. It's really good. Shane Gillis. And you may disagree. He says things I won't even repeat it because when I say it, it'll come off as horrible. Oh. But when he does it, you're just like, man, people of all beliefs could laugh and go, you know what? He doesn't mean it personally. It's that kind of way he does that.
Yeah.
And that I think comes from some degree of self-knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And making it overt is even better. Yeah. We were talking about Shane Gillis and stuff, but I was thinking about when you have these people that are passionate, these kind of known public figures that work in your project Faces of X.
Yeah.
And they're articulating synthesis, antithesis, and thesis viewpoints.
Yeah. Something
that we might have been talking about before is as a process for them, since they're passionate about one particular side or the other, or maybe the integral synthesis of it. Yeah. What's the process like for them? Is it like a kind of therapy in itself?
For Liv in particular, for Liv Bory, who's in
and we'll link to all this.
Yeah, it was in particular for her because she felt like she had a schizophrenic relationship with capitalism and was kind of going back and forth on it, and just working on the script together kind of helped her work through that. So it was in a way kind of therapeutic for her.
Yeah.
And for me, honestly, really, I probably benefited the most from writing these scripts. Always, it's like I think I know where I stand on these things, and inevitably, you just peel back the layers of the onion, and just the view just expands. I'm able to kind of include more perspectives. But with every single one of these issues, I thought I knew where I was at the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that the mind that is reasonably open, even if you think it may not be, maybe you're calcified on a position, that exercise can rock it open.
Yeah.
It's in many ways, it's similar to the exercise of actually being with someone who articulates the antithesis to the viewpoint your thesis is espousing. So, like I was very confused and bewildered by the whole gender thing recently, wondering whether it's biopsychosocial. Maybe the social component has really taken such a prominence that we're missing something. And then I spent a few days with someone who identifies as non-binary, and they really were able to express in a way that I understood nuance in this position that I never would have understood had I not been with that person. And that person could articulate thesis, antithesis, and synthesis themselves. Wow. But obviously, they were very invested in a particular thesis, and had actually been an activist around it to some extent in the past. And instead of shutting down and being like, "Well, no, my feelings are this on this," I was like, "Okay, tell me more." And that's where that component of compassion, like there's a human connection at the heart of this that we often will discount, especially in our virtual worlds of like, I'm arguing with a nameless, faceless, non-playable character.
Right.
When you sit with someone, it's very different.
What was the view? What in particular did they move you on?
So I didn't really, there were so many nuances of this that I didn't understand. Like, first of all, like what even... Like, why would a person born biologically male want to wear a dress and dress as a woman? Aren't they just sort of appropriating what they think is culturally feminine, and the argument that the TERFs make, right? Which is like, well, you're trying to cosplay as a woman.
Yeah. And
the way that she kind of articulated this to me, and actually we do an interview later that's coming out later. Yeah, not specifically about gender, although we touch on it. It's not about that at all. It's about the gender binary being so culturally constructed that there is the biological component, there's those drives and stuff, but there's this fluidity of identity that if I want to wear a dress because I like a dress, I'm going to wear a dress and I'm going to have a beard.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wear earrings.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. Yeah. But the way that society will see that is just weird. Yeah. And people have been dressing up as women to make fun of them for so long that there's all that dynamic.
Right.
And so it goes into this rabbit hole of nuance. And this person came to this identity realization late in life. So could articulate years of being a cis male. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was just like, I've not really seen it from this perspective.
Yeah.
And then the more I spent time, the more I realized, this is very societally constructed. So I get it. Like, do what you want.
Yeah.
But then the subtleties of like that 3-legged stool that's shown in Faces of X when they're talking about gender. It's like, well, then what about in sports?
Yeah.
And these kind of things. It's like, well, then that's a discussion that you start to have.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing is a beautiful thing when people are open. Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed is one-on-one, people tend to be much more open.
Yeah.
Even people with really diametric. I noticed this during COVID. I would talk to people and they would start to espouse a view that was very entrenched in a particular COVIDiate, and those were the fake categories we created, like the hardcore, like everything has got to be locked down and I'm a COVIDian. Yeah. And then they were branded COVIDiates, the ones that are like, maybe the economy matters and we should be able to see faces. But then the extremes of both were just outrageous. It seemed outrageous. You talk to someone who seemed like one or the other, and as you start to notice you align with their morality, what they're trying to do, they would open to seeing the other thing as, oh, maybe I get it now. Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing about social media is we're seeing this funhouse version of ourselves.
That's right.
Like, we don't even fully know how much we actually like agree. I mean, but when you look at the Pew numbers, like the majority of Americans support sensible abortion rights.
That's right.
But it could be that there is this like silent majority of us that is already more integral than we even realize.
I am a deep believer that that is true. And I think they may not even know what they are.
Yeah.
Because they may still feel like they're in this camp or that camp.
Yeah. Well, the most common theme in the comments of Faces of X has been something like, "Thank you for showing me the inside of my brain."
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people do already have this and recognize that this is what they're already, the way they're already thinking. They just don't see it reflected back to them in most of the media that they consume.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Because it is a tool for self-discovery. I get those comments occasionally where it's like, and it focuses on suffering. So they'll say, I was really angry about this or that, and I hated this person in my family, or I was really mad about this topic to the point where it was like, ah. And then I saw a show where you're talking about the moral foundations or how you can kind of see all these different perspectives as being true but partial. And maybe there's a real, more true, but everybody's trying to be good. And I just was able to release it. And it came with tears and it came with like this sense of relief. And it's like, wow. And imagine if we do that work on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same thing.
What would you say has been your biggest delta?
Oh boy. There's so many. Like I used to be, if you go back to my old videos, I was such an absolutist about medical intervention, about
medical intervention,
meaning
over.
Yeah, like we're right and everybody else doesn't know what they're talking about because we trained to do this and you didn't.
Yeah. On that side of medical intervention.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like because that's how I was trained. 10 years at Stanford as a hospital doc.
Wow.
And so what I would champion is my tribe.
Yeah.
And my tribe was healthcare professionals who were burned out, tired of being like second guessed and questioned by administrators, by patients, and so I would give lip service to patient empowerment. But in reality, I was like, look, man, we trained to do this. We know what's best. We can interpret it with patients, but we got to assert that we're the ones who know this shit. And that means, and I did take very solid stances on childhood vaccinations, but then I was like, everybody should get a flu shot and this and this and then. It's like, well, but no, is that really true?
Well, what brought you to question that?
So it started over time and a lot of it was just traveling the country, doing talks for large healthcare conferences and talking to people with radically different views who felt all very right and good to me. It was like, oh, I see that that's true. I see that that's true. And then COVID was the final nail because it was like, wait a minute, everything I thought was true. But even before that, when we were talking about Health 3.0, I was seeing how this has to be integrated with patient, doctor, team.
Yeah,
it's not just this. It's not Health 1.0.
Yeah.
It's not 2.0. It's 3.0.
Yeah.
So it was a slow evolution punctuated by insights that would happen. And then discovering Jonathan Haidt, discovering meditation and awakening and that, it just accelerated it. And then you get to a point in the awakening journey where all views are seen as constructions in a way, but some are more conducive to less human suffering.
Yeah.
And so you naturally go the course of compassion.
Yeah.
And that may be aligning with someone who you disagree with in this for the sake of relieving their obvious discomfort, to where you're just saying, okay, no, I get what you're saying. I'm not going to argue with you now. I'm going to align with you as much as I can. And there'll be another time when a crack might open, because it's really not in anybody's interest to make you suffer here, because you're suffering. I can see it.
Yeah.
You're feeling the cognitive dissonance. That's enough of a crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cognitive dissonance is actually what I learned in Reckonings is what moves people to fundamentally transform their worldviews, is exactly that cognitive dissonance. The reason I started this podcast, actually, it's actually goes back to the same story with the rats at Stanford. So outside, I had this observation about I want to be on the same side as the trees and the people. Then we go inside for the city council meeting, and the person from Rats was testifying at the meeting, and I'm looking at the city council members, and the person from Rats is talking about the endangered salamander and the endangered spotted owl, and I'm looking at these city council members, and their eyes are just glazing over. And I'm just like, these people have heard this a million times. Like, I don't know what would change their minds, but it's not this.
It's not this.
It's not this. So what would change their mind. And that led to this whole fascination with how do people change, and ended up started Reckonings and learned. But what and I used to have this running list of things that I thought radically transformed people. It was like near-death experience, birth of your first child, like psychedelics, like sometimes very rarely, but sometimes information. It's very rare because usually we're trust information that confirms what we already believe.
That's right.
Sometimes information, but as I interviewed people, this wasn't a scientific investigation, but I did probably spend over 200 hours or I don't know how many hundreds of hours interviewing people who had gone through all kinds of transformative change. And what I learned was that it's not, those things came up, near-death experiences, et cetera, but it wasn't that those things make us change. It's that these things like that reveal to us the difference between who we think we are and who we actually are, or the difference between the impact we think we're having on the world and the impact we're actually having on the world. And it was seeing that difference, seeing that gap, that's what initiated a process of transformation.
That's beautiful. And that's absolutely, so you asked me like what things I've shifted on, and I can be even more specific now, because I'm realizing now that you're talking, like even awakening, like spiritual awakening, where you realize the nature of, your true nature. You see it in a flash, and you can't talk about it, but you realize you're not what you thought you were. You're not this limited body, and you're not even a spirit that's, you're not discussable. It's not discussable.
Every time I say I am, there's a little bit of me that's like, what do I know about what I am? Am I anything other than a total mystery to myself?
Thank you. Yeah. You just said it. That's it. I am ... That's right. That's it. I am. That's all I know.
Yeah, I am. Hopefully, I think.
Even that. Even that can regress.
And how am I? Yeah, I have
no clue.
How are any of us?
Total mystery.
We just keep on being somehow, but how are we? Who knows?
And we can talk about the spiritual aspects of integral because they come back but yeah. And so that in itself is a huge cognitive dissonance, because now the mind comes back and it tries to explain what happened and it can't. And then your whole worldview becomes more fluid. You're open in a way that you weren't before.
I think you're speaking post-Centaurius now.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I know that from that view, from that non-view, it's not even a view, it's strange, where everything blinks out and it's just, you can say, nothing can be said, and yet everything is exactly as it is. And that's all you can say. But the way that I have evolved too, I used to be a rabid, like part of my brand. I talk about audience capture. Doctors and stuff watch my brand because I would ridicule the purveyors of woo. So people who would say, I'm an energy healer and I do ayahuasca ceremonies in Marin, I would be like, yeah, whatever, dog. Like, let's talk about that. And I'd make videos making fun of them and so on. And people loved it because it was funny, and it reinforced their tribal belief that Western science will trump any kind of nonsense, right?
And look at you now doing ayahuasca.
And now I'm like doing ayahuasca ceremonies, and I'm talking about energy. Everything is energy, and I've experienced experientially things that are so profound and healing. And what I can say is I make no truth claims about them. I have no idea what's going on. I know experientially they're profoundly transformative.
Yeah.
So now when I talk about medicine, I talk about biopsychosocial and spiritual, and it's all a interdependent happening.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go back to my same job at Stanford doing hospital medicine because it seemed reductionist. It's one quadrant. It's the it's quadrant.
Yeah.
And the I and the we are not involved there. So now it's like, well, the I, internal self-experience, the we, the intersubjective social experience, and the it's, the biological objective stuff experience, they're all interpenetrated. They can't be reduced to one or the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I bet there's still a difference between the way you talk about it and the way the people that you made fun of talk about it, right? And in Integral, we call it the pre-trans fallacy.
Let's talk about that.
Same season, different year. Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Because...
I don't know these people that used to make fun of it. I'm just going out on a limb here.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Because if somebody talked about it in a post-rational way, so let's talk about the pre-trans fallacy. That's so beautiful you brought that up. This is an idea that Ken Wilber talks about where, rationalism, this orange sort of phase where we start to look at things scientifically. We realize the universe might be predictable in certain ways based on science that we can explore empirically. Pre-rational is more magical thinking, more like there's a God that does everything, everything's predetermined by strings, or it's an oceanic animistic thing where the animals and the spirits and stuff are doing things. And that gives way to a rational where it's like, no, actually, there was a place for that in our development, but now it's like, we can actually,
now we really know what's
we
going
can
on.
build a fucking iPhone and we can do shit based on science and quantum mechanics. Great. Then the post-rational says, yeah, that's true. And there's also something here that goes beyond the ability of standard science to reduce. It's almost a meta science or a meta way of doing it where it's like, yes, that's true. And there's also consciousness itself, which we don't understand, and energetics in the body that we don't understand, and the placebo effect, which we don't understand. And
the most underutilized tool in all of medicine,
all
probably.
Of medicine. All of medicine.
Yeah.
We use it unconsciously. That's what's amazing. And imagine if we actually consciously weaponized it.
Yeah.
And so the post-rational incorporates the rational. It actually says, we're going to rationally look at things that are transrational. They're beyond rational.
Yeah.
But often people will come at this in a pre-rational way and get it confused with me. Oh, I'm totally,
Well, there's the meme now, which is really helpful. There's the meme with the, it's the bell curve where it's like the idiot.
Oh, yeah. Dunning-Kruger.
And the ninja who have the same idea. And then there's like the current thing guy. Who's but it's kind of amazing, actually. I love that it's basically a meme that expresses the pre-trans fallacy that people are using all the time.
Yeah. So now you have a Reiki healer who comes on, is making millions of dollars going, the energetics of the body mean that your medicines are poison. And so she's rejecting rationality, but she's playing it off as if she's beyond rationality, but she's actually pre-rational. She's magical thinking. Now the post-rational Reiki healer will say, oh, it's lovely that you're getting chemotherapy and you're getting treatment for your cancer and all of this. Now let's go into those parts that science doesn't touch because it's not an overlapping magisteria, but there's a part of you that is this healing in the body, this energetic flow. And I am pretty good at intuiting where that is.
Yeah.
And just the relationship between us is enough to actually help that.
Yeah.
And that is much more transrational.
Yeah.
So she incorporates the rational with what is post-rational with an understanding of what was pre-rational.
Yeah.
So that is very hard to make fun of from where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to, my husband and I lived in Providence for a little while, and there was this, a doctor, it was a I think it was actually a cardiologist, and I think he was like an acupuncturist who got together and started what they called an integral medicine meeting, and they would just get clinicians, physicians, doctors, healers from all modalities together, and someone would present a case that they were struggling with, and then they would all just like look at it from their lens. It was so cool. I'm not in medicine, but I was just loving the like integral
all the parts of the elephant and then trying to integrate it into the elephant.
It was so cool just to see what the different people could see of the case, things that the person whose case it was hadn't even thought of.
And so this is something we do in something called tumor board at a big academic institution. You have someone with a cancer, that's a question. You bring the neurologist, the surgeon, the oncologist, the primary care doc, the psychologist, and they all come together and they go, okay, these are the parts that I'm seeing. And you'll notice like, there's a saying in medicine, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
Well, and it's beyond medicine.
Yeah.
The hammer starts to see, whoa, there's screws here too.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a screwdriver on top of this. And the parts start to come together.
Yeah.
And in integral medicine would look at all four quadrants of experience, of reality, the I subjective, the we intersubjective, the it's this, and the what is it?
There's
we
it singular and it plural.
It plural. It plural is our technology and our social structure and our built environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas it singular is the body. Yeah. And you look at all the quadrants.
Yeah.
And again, you could say that as biopsychosocial.
Yeah.
So all these things converge. They're different ways of saying the same thing.
Yeah. Until the thing gets so long that you just call it
medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. Eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually.
That's the goal.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then you see the shadow starts to emerge in that. Like, we're missing this. Like, what about aliens? How do we treat them? New problems. Yeah. It's really nice to talk to somebody who's steeped in this, who's actually pragmatic, doing something in the world, producing content, but not calling it integral and trying to make it wonky, but just saying, here's something that can help us get together on things that have torn us apart. It's beautiful work.
Thank you. It's so fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy creating it.
What would you like people to do to see your stuff? We can put all the links
The links, yeah. I mean, the latest, yes, is Faces of X.
Yeah.
You can find that at facesofx.org. I am embarking on my next project soon, so I won't be releasing for a couple months new material. But I'm pretty active on Twitter, so people can find me there at Steph Lepp. But there's just an infinity of ideas constantly. I live in a semi-permanent state of creative anguish because there is so much more that I want to create than I have the capacity to. I can kind of only go from one project to the next.
That's the only way to be.
Yeah.
That's the only way to be. Yeah. Things get a little present very fast. That's right. Before I forget, I did want to talk about the spiritual line of development in Integral, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you have time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a little time.
Yeah.
So this is again, in these sort of spiral dynamics, there's not just one line of development. There's like the ability to do math at different degrees. There's the social development. There's interpersonal development. There's psychological development, and there's spiritual development too. So in the Integral or the spiral dynamics sort of unfolding, we start in this sort of early animistic religious belief where the earth is sacred and the animals are deities and so on. And then that yields ultimately to the blue hierarchical. There's a paternal or maternal God figure, and it's a hierarchical series of bishops and so on. So the Catholic Church is a great example of a blue level organization. And then atheist skepticism of orange, where we discard all that and we say it's all science and the Big Bang, quantum mechanics. And then the emptiness that arose from that gets dealt with in green as maybe a pluralistic, all religions are partially it's all culturally created, man, and new agey kind of a little bit of pre-rational. And then, so what is an integral spirituality?
I mean, I guess formally it would be something like the meta theory. It would be weaving together different wisdom traditions into some kind of like meta wisdom tradition that everyone can, more and more people can get on board with. I imagine. I mean, do you know who Mark Gaffney is?
I do.
Okay, so he is and Zach Stein together are developing. They didn't give it a very marketable name. They call it cosmo-erotic humanism.
Dear God.
Good luck with that, y'all.
Yeah.
But they are trying to develop somewhat of
sounds like a Pornhub channel. Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that'll attract more people.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, but they are trying to kind of develop, or they have developed a beautiful. It's kind of like a set of universal values, and they are weaving together different wisdom traditions. Myself, I happen to have inherited Judaism.
Yeah.
And it took me, it was only recently actually that I realized how Jewish the way that I think is. In Judaism, we are commanded to study the Talmud in pairs because it is by virtue of having different perspectives that we sharpen each other's intellect. So Judaism is all about viewpoint diversity. That's so much of what's going on. Like, we are always taught to question and debate, but like with a spirit of friendship. Yeah. And so it's actually just more recently that I've kind of realized the already existing kind of relationship or alignment between the spiritual tradition I inherited and kind of my creative work or my philosophical work. But that's more recent.
Yeah.
I guess maybe one more thing on that. It's, the story, and I don't think this is, maybe two more things on that. I don't think this is specific to Judaism, but I know that in Judaism, the story of creation is a story of differentiation and reintegration. That's what's going. I mean, the first thing God did was separated light from dark, and it's a constant process.
Duality.
Of creating more ingredients to then mix together to then create more new to then, and so that is absolutely a through line in my work. So I feel like I'm just seeing more and more connections between whatever, my integral creative work. And maybe this exists in all other wisdom traditions. I just happen to be the most familiar with Judaism. I guess the last thing on that too, another connection I'm seeing is that, so many wisdom traditions do have this. In Judaism, it's expressed as no false idols. It's just don't confuse the map with the territory.
That's right.
Right. And that is very much, we are creating a Jewish home. We do observe Shabbat, and Shabbat is this opportunity to kind of just, we spend 6 days kind of, let's say looking at the map or making the map or fixing the map, and then just one day a week to just marvel.
Be in the territory.
Yeah. So and again, there might be these kinds of connections in many traditions. I just happen to be seeing them within my own.
That was a beautiful articulation of this. So it's funny, we do a thing called Screen-Free Sunday where the family just gets rid of all the devices, and it's a sort of mini, and it's exactly that. It's like, well, we're super present here with each other. Like, this is really remarkable. So in a sense, like, I'm not even sure we need a universal religion as much as we need a universal way of approaching the perennial wisdom, which is what you're pointing at.
Yeah.
So you can come at it from Judaism, which was your line.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was born as a Zoroastrian, which is this ancient religion, and became an atheist, and we're talking about transformation. And now I could not tell you what I am, because having these experiences, it's like, oh, I don't even, like, everything is God, nothing is God. And yet I look at Christians and Jews and Muslims and Buddhists, and I see truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also see abuse, and I also see doctrine, and I also see human delusion.
Yeah.
And that's fine too.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's part of it.
Yeah.
And it just keeps refining.
Yeah.
So maybe integral is the reemergence of an overt connection to the perennial truth. Yeah.
Yeah. The eternal Tao.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which cannot be spoken, or it is not the Tao. Yeah. Yeah. And a humility in the face of that, because there can be a certain arrogance in the integral worldview, which is like, oh, I'm a little more integral than, I'm a little more holarchical.
Yeah.
And this is like, this will put you flat on your face.
Yeah.
The humility in the face of the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's what I love about what you said about the Shabbat.
Shabbat.
Here you are with it. No map.
Yeah.
Just it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unplugged.
Yeah.
And it's just, whoa, the radiance of it.
Yeah.
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 Do you mark the beginning and the end of your Screen-Free Sunday, or is it just Sunday?
Yeah. We would give people some time to do their shit early. Okay. And then after breakfast, it would start, and then it would end as we're getting ready to go to bed. But most people were then like the kids, most people, my kids were like, yeah, it was good. They would complain about it, but then they would be like, yeah, this is good. Yeah. And I would get antsy too. It's like a detox, right? I mean, you worked at the Center for Humane Technology. Mm-hmm. That was profound, watching the documentary. And I know that's just an aspect of a reflection of what you guys to some degree were doing. Yeah. But that work is crucial. And it's pointing again at like, what are the perverse incentives? Totally. Right?
Yeah.
And how was that like for you, seeing all that from the inside, working in that group?
Well, I've actually Tristan is an old friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been friends I knew him during his Google days while he was trying to change the system from the inside.
From the inside, right.
Yeah. And then he wasn't able to do that. And so he shifted to launching CHT. And I was about to say change the system from the outside, but he's so well connected that it's very much an inside-outside. It's like he's kind of a bridge figure. But so we were friends. I actually introduced Ken Wilber's work to him, and he introduced Daniel Schmachtenberger to me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But now it's pivoted to AI.
Right.
But what CHT does, which I really appreciate, is so the entire second half of The Social Dilemma is actually about capitalism.
Yeah.
Right. So you talk about the tech, and then you zoom out to the economic system in which this technology is being funded and developed and used.
That's right.
Which we need to, and that was part of the mandate I gave myself with the podcast, Your Undivided Attention, is kind of zooming the focus out from, technology to the economic context in which this is,
in the integral system.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
The techno-economic system that's encouraging and supporting this.
Yes, and I would love to see CHT do more advocacy at that level.
Right.
Like get involved in like what's up with the short-term, profit maximization. Like what,
right.
how can we intervene at that level?
Right.
Yeah.
Because and this is something that you touch on in Faces of X in the capitalism piece with Liv, and it's well done, but there's still an answer that's forthcoming, which is, what does an integral post-capitalism world look like? Because it's not socialism.
Yeah.
It's not capitalism as it is, because that's a self-terminating process, because it's extractive. Now, communism was extractive too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the way that it's framed in the video is that they both have the same flaw. They both prioritize like one metric at the expense of everything else.
Right.
So it's the shift from prioritizing narrow metrics to just accounting for more of what we truly value.
Seeing the true
omni-consideration.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that requires better technology to be able to quantify what those considerations might be, maybe?
That's part of it. I think also, I'm going to get nerdy for a second. Are you familiar with the term synergistic satisfier, or the concept?
No, it sounds like a Schmachtenberger thing.
It's not. It's my simple way to explain it's something that feeds many birds with one scone, let's say, like breastfeeding. It's got so many we could call them unintended benefits. It's like
bonding.
It's free, it bonds, the oxytocin, it's like health. It's got a million up and down at many different levels of organization. It's like, having benefits. So therefore, I would say does something that doesn't have that, should that even be considered a solution at all? Like anything that we consider to be a solution
should have a synergistic satisfier.
Yeah. And so, it will take technology to quantify and measure, but I think the fact that it is working should manifest itself at multiple scales of organization.
So it's self-validating to a degree in that it's going to show up with all these benefits and people will just know.
And then we're like, what a coincidence. It's
right.
like, it's a coincidence. It's like the Three Sisters actually is another great example. Corn, beans, and squash have been grown together throughout history in Mesoamerica because the squash shades the roots of all the three plants, and then the corn is the stalk for the beans to climb up, and the beans fix nitrogen, and then they provide us with complementary nutrients, and we're like, what a coincidence. They provide us with, isn't it a coincidence that they give us and they fit? It's like, no, it's because they fit so well together.
That's right.
That they take up, that is why it all works together.
That's right.
So I think that's, again, we will need technology and data to find those synergistic satisfiers, but I think that's a lot of where, let's say like design, like resilient design.
Yeah. So all the parts, all the parts are crucial.
Yeah.
To emerge that next emergent, and that we can't really predict easily. And I've said that in healthcare because people will ask me, so what do you need to do to fix healthcare? And it's like, well, there are perverse incentives, there's old ways of thinking, but I don't know what the next emergent is. It's almost a caterpillar scenario. The caterpillar that can't tell what the butterfly is, but the caterpillar has put in the work.
Yeah.
Until it became a self-terminating process. So it's eating its environment, it's destroying the tree it's in until there's a transformation that it can't predict that is the sum total of everything plus a little something magical. And then you end up with a butterfly that self-pollinates the same trees. So these systems will show up in that way, but we have to be open to it. We can't keep our binary thinking and this antithetical, like it's either capitalism or socialism.
Right.
Get on board.
Yeah.
Because that's not it.
Yeah, that's the guy at the Daily at Berkeley being like,
exactly.
What side are you on?
Whose side are you on?
Yeah.
Team volleyball or team homeless guy? It's like, well, that's not a very good choice. I hate volleyball and I don't really want to be homeless. So like, I'm just not feeling it, dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think voices that are integral, meaning they're expressing in the way you are showing up. Ken Wilber used to say the population needs to reach about, what, 10%?
Yeah, I think it was less.
Less, maybe even like 5%.
3 or something.
Before there's a tipping point.
There is data from the Renaissance of like what it took, what it has taken when we have had moments of cultural enlightenment.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't remember the exact number. And now with as much information sharing as we have, could it be? I don't know.
Yeah. Assuming we don't self-terminate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
big
there's a kind of a exponential tipping point, because what happens is the ideas enter the cultural mainstream and they're seen as valid, and then masses can get on board.
Yeah.
And this happened in the 60s with green pluralism showing up.
Right.
There was segregation, there was overt racism, there was all of this. And then this tipping point happened very rapidly, where a small percentage of the population was like, wait a minute, actually, maybe diverse viewpoints are equally valid. And and then it just snowballs. Yeah. So hopefully that's happening. But I think Ken's been saying that since the 90s.
Yeah.
So
I do think, though, younger people, I mean, you would actually be able to speak. Your kids are a little older than mine. I'd be curious what you have to say about it. Because I do have the sense from the limited exposure I have that young people just, the tribalism is just boring.
It's
like,
boring.
How boring is it to know what your perspective is going to be based on what channel you're on?
They think we are idiots for how we behave about politics. Like when we talk politics around the table, I'm often asking what they think. And they're so open-minded and they can steel man each argument.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So,
so it's exciting.
Yeah, I feel like it's, to me, it's like Faces of X. Hopefully it should get boring, right?
Yeah.
We don't need it anymore.
Like, duh.
It's like we can cut out the back and forth and just go straight to synthesis.
Yeah.
This is like training wheels.
Yeah.
That maybe your kids' generation, our kids' generation, don't need.
Maybe they don't need it. Yeah. But let's not assume that, because with all this social media and everything, they're going to need all the help they can get.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But it's the height of hubris to think that I might know how to give them that help. That in itself is the fun of parenting.
Yeah. We do our best.
We do our best.
Yeah.
And forgive ourselves for our transgressions, because we can't know what they are. And there's no free will. What? I'm just kidding. Except when there is. Yeah.
Except when there is. Except when it helps me to decide that there is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's interesting. I have a few Jewish friends now who've spoken in very glowing terms about taking, it's Saturday, right?
It's Friday sundown to Saturday sundown.
Got it.
Yeah. Well, it's actually technically Friday 3 stars in the sky to Saturday 3 stars in the sky. You can
and when there's light pollution, that takes a while.
Them. Oh, yeah.
Right. So that's the tradition.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Cool, because we didn't, this is ancient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
stars would mark it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. And now it's funny. So that was another thing that's changed with me, again, not to beat a dead horse. I used to look at people who were religious in any way as somehow delusional or less than or not smart.
Yeah.
Like, how could you believe in this? And now it's like, the beauty of this tradition and the surrender into the unknown, what we don't know.
Yeah.
And the having had those experiences of the divine, touching God face and all that, it's like, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that way too. I can tell, when I'm at a conference or something, when there are kind of like more people of faith in the room.
Yeah, you feel it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's and that was something that came to me more when I traveled through Texas, because it was interesting being a little more heterodox.
Yeah.
I would get invited to more sort of center right sort of places.
Yeah.
Because they were probably tired of having these academic medical people from the coasts coming in, telling them about diversity and equity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And they're like, listen, for us, diversity, equity, inclusion, like we live in a small town that's isolated, and it's really about group identity, because that's how we thrive here.
Yeah.
We need to have some degree of homogeneity of a fundamental belief. And they'd take me to church and they'd show me these. And I was like, God, these people are wonderful.
Yeah.
like how was I was really entrenched in a position that was based on misunderstanding, fear, and a entrenched belief in orange, actually.
Yeah.
Kind of stuck in orange rationality. So when that starts to loosen, then the world opens. And then it's just so much less suffering for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to get angry at people. You don't have to feel like you need to teach them something. It's
Yeah.
like, no, they're teaching you.
Yeah.
The whole of life is teaching you.
Yeah.
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 It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband definitely has his feet in these many different worlds, which is not unrelated to why I fell in love with him. But yeah, he's a trained medical doctor.
Yeah.
Deep relationship with God.
Yeah.
Absolutely coexist.
How can they? I mean, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they?
Yeah. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
And you could also say for the person who is completely agnostic to the existence of God and hasn't had a personal experience of that kind, that's fine too.
Yeah.
That's the stage of wherever it is. And it doesn't even mean that you have to have another stage.
Yeah.
But we could see where that would show up.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And there are people I know that have had profound spiritual awakening, no self-realization, everything is empty radiance. And they're like, oh, there's no fucking God. It's all science. Like they'll say that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. I mean, there's at some point, even those beliefs.
But I just have to wonder then, like, what is guiding you?
So this is where this knowing thyself has to really come to the forefront. Because if I were being honest, when I was just a devout atheist, I would have said, oh, I don't know what's guiding me. It's just some force that's bigger than me that I don't understand. And it's like, well, substitute that phrase for the word God, and it's really not different in some sense. And you could say, well, it's all the sum total of all the causes and conditions that happened since the Big Bang. It's like, okay, then let's ask what happened before the Big Bang, and the mind starts to fall apart, and then you realize there's no answerable questions in this way. So however you want to exist is how it's going to be, and it's fine.
Have you seen that Louis C.K. sketch where his daughter is asking him, like, more and more, it's like, well, why is the sky blue? Why, and then he's just like, you've reached the end of my knowledge. Like, I don't know anymore. And she continues, and he's like having a midlife crisis.
He loses his shit on her. Yeah. He's like, just eat your fucking McNuggets. Such a great.
You've just reached the,
You've reached the end of what's knowable.
Yeah, what's knowable.
So now we start to just treat it as an almost beautiful human art of like, oh my God, like 5,000 years of tradition or 2,000 years of tradition. It's like, why not?
Oh my God.
And I was born into it.
Yeah.
It's part of my karmic legacy, actually. It's unfolding.
Yeah, it's like I could go shopping, or I could just acknowledge, like, I inherited this. It's been being practiced for thousands of years.
And I'm not going out and pushing it on other people. I'm not like starting wars over it. I'm just like digging it, man.
Yeah.
And this actually dives into one last thing, if you have time. Do you have a little more time? That we were talking about before we started the show, which is what's going on right now with you and so on. And we were talking to each other. For me, it's the unconscious conditioning thread of the kind of awakening process where we start to realize that forces well before and beyond us are in every moment guiding what's happening. And so the entire tradition of our genetic lineage and our cultural lineage shows up right now. It can't go anywhere else. Where else would it show up? And it shows up, and it colors and influences everything. And if we're blind to it, if we don't know, we act sometimes in unconscious ways, and they can sometimes be maladaptive. Like maybe there was intergenerational trauma, maybe there was some, inherited, there's domestic violence or whatever, and it just perpetuates, and we're blind to it. But when we see it openly and we welcome it, we say, okay, this is welcome, whatever it is. Then the guardrails fall off, and it's like, okay, now I can experience life knowingly with full content. And in a way, that's an integral spirituality. It's recognizing all the things that came before are true and part of me and also not me. All right. So what is me is so beyond an understanding. So then it just becomes beauty, and you don't have to stress about the dinner conversation with your crazy fundamentalist dad or uncle who's like, do you go to church and pray? It's like, yeah, man, I'll come with you. Yeah. I think we did a thing here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
We integrated.
Stanford and Cal. I mean,
dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. We talked about Faces of X. We talked about Reckonings and Deep Reckonings and the work you've done, synthesis production, synthesis
media.
And we talked about...
I was going to call it Evolving Productions, which I like.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. Yeah. But synthesis is good. Thanks. Yeah. It has a good vibe.
Thanks.
Yeah. And it feels post-rational rather than pre-rational.
Okay.
Because you could have called it like... Kundalini Enterprises, and that would have been it. I love it. Stephanie Lepp, thank you so much for trekking down here.
Thank you, Zubin.
And hopefully we can have more conversations as we continue to give voice to the synthesis striving. And guys and gals and non-binary pals, definitely check out the links below. Share the show with people you care about to kind of get us to critical integral mass.
Yes. Yeah. It's up to you all. Get us there.
That's right. This is our call to action.
Yeah. We're going to be the tipping point.
And as someone who worked with the Center for Humane Technology and all the perversion of social media and all that, I have to say this. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, hit the little bell, make sure to tell all your friends they're losers if they don't believe what I'm saying. And thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Zubin.
We are out. Peace.
That's so funny.